So the next caller we have is going to be Derek in North Carolina. Derek, thank you so much for being patient. You've been on hold for a while. And Derek is a
Hey, Derek.
Christian and would like to talk about the fact that early Christians recorded the crucifixion. And this is a fave topic of yours, Paul. So I get to mostly
All
listen again,
right.
probably. Hi, Derek. Can you hear us? Welcome to the line.
Yeah. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We
Loud and
can.
clear.
And we're so excited. So, what's your best evidence for Christianity, Derek?
Well, the one that I gave was the fact that Christians retain the account of Jesus being crucified by the Romans, which normally would be considered an embarrassment and be, seen as a defeat, not necessarily a victory.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that because Jesus was crucified and that was in some way embarrassing, the
Mhm.
fact that that stayed as part of the story means that the rest of it is true. Like there was definitely, if Jesus was resurrected or if Jesus was crucified, then there's definitely a resurrection, or what do you? I
Yeah.
guess I'm not clear.
It sounds like he's saying that
Well, yeah,
the Christian, the fact that Jesus was
what?
crucified is embarrassing because I guess they caught him and killed him, and that's
Okay.
embarrassing. So they would
Mhm.
Christians who or at least Jesus followers at the time wouldn't have recorded a crucifixion because they wouldn't have wanted anybody to know that they got him because that's embarrassing. They would have, I guess, hid it or
So, Derek, let me
is that
ask
right?
you.
Did I get
So,
that?
well, yeah, is that Shannon on the right track with what you're saying?
I think she is.
Okay.
Cool. All
So
right.
let
I'm
me
gonna
just
bow out
ask
again because
this.
Paul knows this stuff and I don't.
All right. So, just for the sake of this discussion, we're going to go with that there was a man named Jesus who existed. Sound cool?
Okay.
Okay. So, and then also for the sake of discussion, we're going to say that this Jesus was definitely executed under Pontius Pilate. Sound cool?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just so then let's say my general position is that it's entirely possible, as I can see it, that everything happened after that was a legend. So if you're going to form a legend, or not if you're consciously forming it, but if a tall tale grows and grows, if there was one historical element to it, it's pretty tough to yank. Would it not be very tough to yank out the one element that was historical? Or did you, or are you somehow imagining that, or are you basically arguing against Christianity being invented whole cloth?
Right. Yeah. I believe that there's enough evidence to say that Jesus was a historical figure, if nothing else. And there are definitely people who believe in, like the Christ myth theory, that he wasn't at all historical. And
Sure.
I don't think that early Jews would have gone out of their way to invent
Okay.
someone and then have him crucified in the story.
O- Okay. So, but let's say I'm granting you that. So, like, okay. So Jesus was a historical figure, and the Christianity was based upon him, and it was well known that he was crucified. It's not necessarily. I guess you understand that even if everything that happened after that was a legend, including the one historical detail that everyone was aware of, doesn't mean that people were including something that were the embarrassment factor doesn't come into play. Would you agree?
No, I definitely see where you're coming from. Absolutely.
Okay. So,
Wow.
like, and like, just because he was killed, I mean, that's the most mundane claim that we can make, right? So everyone in history died, which is usually why when I'm talking to someone with the resurrection, it's the first thing I grant. Okay, Jesus died. Great. Because, everyone else also died. So is there something else to you that make it compelling, or should tell me that, like, what am I missing that says that this is not a legend after the death part?
Well, I was going to tie it into the experience of Paul, who was a avid persecutor of Christians, who had really no stake in the Jesus movement, so to speak. And then he, did a complete 180 and converted to Christianity and talks about his experience. I just think that I don't know, I just don't know why he would have just completely made up, his experience.
So you're aware that, so you said that Paul didn't have a stake in Christianity, but I think we would agree from his own writing that he had a stake. He was definitely against it, right? Like, would you agree with me that Paul was a
Yeah,
persecutor of the church, and was, if not killing people, at least dragging them to jail and doing bad things to them, right?
right.
Okay. So you're also aware of, in general, people can feel guilty about things, right? People can feel remorse, and generally, things can eat away in their mind. Like that's a thing you've experienced, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I guess, and then so that actually lends actually through trauma, like soldiers, for example, who come home, who felt while they were doing terrible things, they felt justified in doing them. But when they come back, they get what we call post traumatic stress, right?
Correct.
So I guess one of the things that makes sense to me was that if there was someone actively persecuting the church who was doing the terrible things, if we accept him at his word that he was doing, that it seems entirely plausible that his mind, that he suffered some level of post traumatic stress, and that his mind told him, you need to stop dragging these fellow Jews to jail and killing them and persecuting them. Does that seem at all plausible to you?
Absolutely. The main thing with that is, why wouldn't he have just, apologized and been tolerant to Christians while still not believing in Jesus, remaining an Orthodox Jew? Why would he take on that belief, instead of just saying, what I did was wrong. I shouldn't have been persecuting Christians, but I still don't believe, that Jesus is the Messiah and all the rest.
Right, but you've encountered people who do very drastic 180s in their life, right? Like not everyone who leaves Christianity does what I do and creates a YouTube channel to talk about Christianity, right? Like a lot of them, like you described, they stop believing in Christianity and they kind of just live their lives and they never think about it again. But I think you would agree that some people do a 180 in their life. Like you can probably think of examples in your life where someone was all one way and then all the other way, right? Like you can probably think of examples,
Oh yeah.
right?
It
So
does also sound like you had
Myself,
an
I
acute
was raised.
psychiatric event
Oh,
as well.
sorry.
I'm sorry. I like to talk sometimes too. I've been more quiet than I've ever been in my life, probably today. But it also sounds like Paul. Like a lot of people talk about hallucinations. It doesn't even necessarily need to be a hallucination. It sounds like he had an acute psychiatric break at some point in time that could have been caused by the stress of killing people that he knew were innocent. It could have been for any number of reasons, but as a result of potentially having post traumatic stress or a high degree of guilt, this could have been something that happened to him. Like even within the Bible itself, it says that he perceived it and no one else around him did. It's like even in his recounting, other people around him didn't actually perceive or hear or see the specter that appeared to him. It was solely appearing to him. Now it would stand to reason that if you were like, experiencing a high degree of guilt due to literally killing and persecuting innocent people who held this set of beliefs after a buildup over a time, if that starts to weigh on you, you could have that type of event where you just have a psychiatric break and you have a perception of having a perception of the Messiah of the people that you're persecuting could be an internal mechanism that's utilized to sort of expel that guilt and allow you to have the opportunity to essentially atone in an immediate fashion by being absolved by their Messiah. Like there's a million reasons why this could have taken place from a psychological and cognitive perspective. Like when you're looking at somebody having a neurological event. So it is all speculative, but it's just as likely that that happened to me as it is, especially given the circumstances that Paul was in, then it would be that the literal Jesus appeared to him. No one else around him could see it. And you know what I mean? I don't know if any of that
That's
made sense.
very
I
logical.
spewed a lot of it off quickly.
right. So I guess, I mean, the reason I went walk through all this was like you were saying, well, I can't think of a reason, or it seemed to me like you were saying, I can't think of a reason why Paul might have done it. And I guess we were just putting forth whether or not you accept it as a good reason. Do you kind of think that, oh, that is a possible explanation?
Absolutely. And as a Christian, this is actually why I love this station, because it all comes from reason and science, which I do believe in, by the way.
Awesome.
Good.
And
Good.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to look at 2 Corinthians 12, where Paul talks about his experience. And he specifically, I don't want to lead you too far, but he specifically talks about how he himself doesn't understand his own experience. So look at 2 Corinthians 12 and kind of maybe, because the Acts descriptions which Shannon was referencing are absolutely correct. People weren't seeing it, but Paul, in his own words, describes it, and even he says he doesn't really know what's going on there. So, for us to say concretely that we know is kind of putting words in his mouth that he didn't.
Oh, that's interesting too, because it could have been a retroactive construction for
Yeah.
him to wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize that like when he recounted it. Yeah, because it could have been like we construct memories and we don't even realize that we're doing it. Like they've done a series of experiments on it. Like that's why eyewitness testimony is such garbage because we construct memories based on our individual circumstances. Like when we perceive anything, like how our perceptions are processed is essentially like they go to the centers of the brain that are dedicated to those specific types of perceptions, like either temporal for sound or occipital for vision. And then they're sent up through our midbrain into our hippocampus, where they're essentially kind of compared against all of our previous, not only perceptions, but experiences and memories. And then our brain kind of constructs them through that comparison. So that's what deja vu is, for example. It's when you're simultaneously having a comparison experience while having your current experience. So you feel as though you're perceiving a memory in real time. It's a real random sort of misfire. I go off on tangents, but yeah. So that's interesting because it could have been a retroactive reconstruction when he was trying to remember back to why he had these changes. It may not have even been something that happened to him in real time. It could just be that his internal justification that he was utilizing when he was reconstructing why he had come to the positions that he was currently holding. So that's interesting too. I ramble a lot. I find brains interesting. I'm sorry, Derek, but I do have to,
So,
we do
Derek,
have to let you go, dude.
I hope we gave you something to think about,
No,
and appreciate that.
blah, blah,
Definitely.
blah. I
Thank
talk
you
too
so much
much.
for taking my call.
You're lovely to
Thanks, Derek.
chat with. Thank you. Sorry I ramble so much.